I've given up hope.
What?
I gave up hope on that. It's been so long.
I refuse to give up hope. If I can continue writing my stories after 2 years of hiatus, so can he. Even though it's coming on 3 years. Alright. He's still writing things too. That's what makes it even worse, is he is writing. It's just not the story I want him to write. George R. R. Martin. And you're also going to notice, like romance, none of these are exclusively mysteries, but they're stories from which a central point or important event is surrounded by a mystery, where some of the interest in the narrative comes from figuring out where did this relationship come from? Like, where is this going? How did this come to be? And when you're writing mysteries, treat mystery stories like you're connecting a puzzle. You know, you've heard like the common argument when it's a tip for writing is write the beginning, write the end, and then figure out how the middle works in between. That's some common advice you get when you're being told how to write something. You can't do that with mysteries. With mysteries, you should know the entire image before you ever divide the pieces. And don't just construct from the beginning and the end, like most stories. Make it so that multiple pieces, the clues in your story, could lead and fit particularly anywhere. You know, you've all taken, how many of you guys have put together a puzzle? Thank you, yay, people still use puzzles. You know, you've had puzzle pieces where you're going, could this fit? No. And you just sit there like putting each individual piece, hoping the piece ultimately fits where you need it to. And many of the pieces will look similar. And so it forces you to kind of construct an image in your head and hope it fits in with the rest. Yep, there we go. And make sure that whatever the final completed mystery is, whatever the final image of your puzzle is, make sure it makes sense. If your readers can't follow your mystery, they won't care. If they don't know, if it required such a leap of logic that that the reader couldn't possibly see it coming, they're not going to buy it. They won't be interested. And just like in a romance, they won't feel like they've earned the ending.
Don't do what Lost did.
What?
Don't do what Lost did.
Yes. Lost had some good mysteries. They built up things quite nicely. But unfortunately, they made so many leaps of logic that no one could follow it anymore, and no one could predict that that's where it was going to go. And if you're going to the point of trying to shock your audience with your mystery, actually, fans tend to appreciate much more when they can predict something is going to happen than when they're suddenly shocked. Shock them if you can, but if you can make them feel like, I called it! I knew it! They're going to be much more appreciative because it'll make them feel smarter.
I do have, I was a little disappointed with the episode Rarity Investigates because whenever I saw the synopsis and I saw that the Wonderbolts were going to be in it, I immediately thought lightning dust. Please be lightning dust. And then I saw, like from the first moment I saw Wind Rider, I was like, oh man, it's going to be this guy.
Yeah, they introduce a new character, it's probably going to be that guy.
I mean, yes. I mean that is the Scooby-Doo. That is the Scooby-Doo storyline.
I mean, yeah, Scooby-Doo did get me used to like the really important character, like the retired important character, is always the one that does it.
It's the old gardener, things like that. Yeah.
And like
Withers.
Old man Withers. Yeah. It's why did I suddenly get an image of the Jaegerman Jensen from the SpongeBob? Yeah, I have no idea why that suddenly came to my mind. When you said Old Man Withers, that's exactly what came to my mind. No, actually, chocolate came to my mind. Yeah, I don't know. I'm tired. All right, so Actually, a good thing about that is you had a preconceived notion coming in on Rarity Investigates when you
Yeah.
heard about that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I was
That's
just
great.
thinking, who do I know, that already would have a motive to frame Rainbow Dash?
Right, and that sounds fantastic. That's a
and-
red herring. That's a
and-
necessary in mysteries. You need red herrings.
And my suspicions were, like, I was even more sure when I saw that the Wonderbolts were in it.
No, honestly, I would have loved if there was actually, like, if they do another mystery, if they have a character named Red Herring. Something Scooby-Doo did it. Why can't they?
The red herring actually isn't a red herring.
Maybe he did it.
Actually, there was one episode where Red Herring
You're
Puppet and
right.
Scooby-Doo did it, and Fred lost his mind because he made a bet with Velma that he wouldn't accuse Red Herring that episode, and he didn't.
Entire episode.
The entire episode, and it was the only episode he did it. Fred threw a fit. That's one of my favorite
That
episodes.
was such a good series.
The red herring's name was a red herring.
Yeah, and it's good. Red herrings are necessary, but do not compromise your story for red herring. Like, if everybody's calling, it's gonna be him, it's gonna be him, it's gonna be him, all the clues fit to him. No, he was a red herring. Go to this guy. But that makes no sense. Sorry, it's this guy. Maybe it should have been that guy. Like, if all the clues, and even when, like, every single clue is leading to this guy, sometimes it's not Mr. Black with the wrench in, the observatory, Sometimes it just needs to be something else. I mean, that's the thing with, that's the
I
thing.
guess that's one of the things
No,
that
that's the
makes
thing with mysteries, is that sometimes the red herring might be the better option. Or maybe even switching it out and twisting it up and
Or-
having the red herring framing the guy so making the red herring actually the guy, but convinced he's the red herring.
Or you can do the ending of Clue. It's all true.
It's all
And
true.
I guess that's one of the things that makes a mystery more complicated. You have to play off your reader. Like, if you're writing a romance, all you have to do is make the romance or the adventure something the reader can sort of, at the very least, accept as happening.
Right.
Mystery, you have to try to get into the head of your reader.
Exactly.
Because
It's about playing with the reader's expectations. It's about, can they figure it out? Do I know what it is?
that makes it very hard because you can't have, like, you don't want the first, unless you're, I mean, Scooby-Doo can get away with it because it's Scooby-Doo and they, oh, no, this is first Mr. Man they show us is probably it. So they can give away who did in the first scene.
And actually, as the Scooby-Doo franchises got more and more elaborate, they actually ended up switching out a lot of things, like Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Has a great twist. Makes no sense, but it's a great twist. But anyway, wait, what was it? You interrupted my No.
Who dares to
Alright,
interrupt you?
now, comedy and tragedies. There is a quote by Aaron Alston. The difference between tragedy and comedy. Tragedy is something awful happening to somebody else, while comedy is something awful happening to somebody else. And that really is the case. Comedy and tragedy are genres in which the central narrative of conflict is based upon the misery of either the main character or those who surround them, either for laughter or for sympathy. Why do we laugh at the Three Stooges? Because the idea of Curly getting his eyes poked is funny. A character being in pain can be funny
Until it happens to you.
until it happens to you. Well, actually, there's another thing that can happen.
Meanwhile, 127 hours, it's not.
Right. The distinction between the two comes from the extent at which that misery is dished out. And, while comedy is ultimately subjective, I'm not about to try to give huge amounts of clues to, this is how you do comedy. I am not at all qualified to talk about the masteries of comedy, because nobody is. It's ultimately subjective. Comedy only works when the misery of a character is warranted. If the character is asking for something terrible to happen, and it does, that can be funny. But not always. Like,
Squidward.
Yeah. Squidward started out with Squidward making it. Squidward sort of served what you got, but then it escalated beyond.
right, I mean, that's a very good example. The Mysterious Mr. Enter actually talks about that quite a bit. If you ever watch his YouTube channel, he actually goes into quite a lot about SpongeBob, and that when when Squidward deserves it, it's funny, it's enjoyable. But when he's just enjoying his only Sunday off, and these two idiots come knocking at his door, there is no sympathy. There's nothing but sympathy. You feel for Squidward. You're not laughing at him. And so when misery goes too far or is undeserved, then the story is on the road to being classified as a tragedy. Again, with Squidward, I find myself more sorry for Squidward than anything else. Like, I'm surprised Bikini Bottom is still standing, that he hasn't, like, engulfed it in hellfire.
He'll be fine next episode.
He'll be fine next time. Right. But if I can go on a bit of a rant, this is why Spike episodes are rarely funny anymore. Spike is my favorite character. I love Spike. Why does he get treated so poorly? Why?
Larson.
Like, it used to be funny when he got, like, when he would do something or be a bit egomaniacal and something bad would happen, it's like, okay, he had that coming. He had a hot dog stolen. He did nothing wrong except try to help Twilight in the the Princess Spike episode. Sneezedrix. And even when he goes a little too far and he ruins everything, he makes up for things. He gets fixed. I was like, okay, maybe he can get me back. Sneezedrix. Ah, come on! Like,
Who even plants
what?
those kind of flowers when you know there's a dragon that regularly visits Celestia?
Well, there's proof right there that I think there is some kind of funny racism. A little bit. I think it might exist a little bit. Yep.
What did you think of Gauntlet of Fire?
Actually, that's the thing. I love Gauntlet of Fire because it was the first time that Spike was treated like an adult. Because he is perfectly capable of becoming one, as we saw in Secret of My Excess. Clearly, dragons don't age. Dragons do not age like mortal ponies. But he actually acted like this guy with huge amounts of responsibilities, a lot of maturity, the guy who saved an empire twice. And he was fantastic. It was one of my favorite episodes, not just of Spike, but in general. Plus all the dragon lore that it added in. What's the Bloodstone Scepter? Where did it come from? Why does it have the power that it does?
Will he ever run out of dragons to hug?
Alright, some tips for comedy. Owing to, of course, again, owing to comedy's subjective nature, comedic writing is largely independent of advice, with a few exceptions. But there are some things that, like, generally some good schools that people tend to follow. The rule of threes. The notion that any running gag can be performed 3 times during a story or routine. The first time establishes the gag, the second time is performed sometime during the second act and establish it as, oh hey, this is going to be a running gag. And the final time is done at the conclusion of the story. The sneeze strikes could have been fine if he had done something maybe at the end to warrant it. Because, and this is the reason, the final performance of a gag can either be played straight to indicate that the character is still learning from their mistakes, which demands that they make a similar mistake at the end, or it can be upended to indicate the growth of a character. For example, if he had received flowers, he was like, "Are these sneeze strikes?" It's like, "Oh, sorry, here you go." You know, something like that, because he'd shown growth, he'd shown development. He hadn't done anything to warrant it. Or if Spike had done something slightly egomaniacal to deserve getting the sneeze strikes again. But the fact that he was just trying to help Twilight and was getting punished for it entered into some Squidward territory there for a bit. And of course, the door slammed in his face. Lynn is that good. When are they going to stop doing that?
Pinkie Pie put him inside a suitcase.
Alright. So, some other ones. Never solely rely on puns or references. You can have them throughout the narrative, sparingly, but better comedy comes from situations and how the characters react to those situations. Puns are funny, and references are cool if you can catch them, but references rely on your fans knowing what you're referencing. If they don't, they won't get it, it won't be funny. And puns are funny once, maybe twice. But if you put yourself into if you start to describe a situation that everyone's been a part of, George Carlin, Richard Pryor, those individuals, their kind of stories, or they would tell stories about situations they've been in. Situational comedy is much, much better for getting your character, for getting your readers involved. And there are some stories I've gotten huge belly laughs, and at 2 in the morning when your parents are trying to sleep, that's not a good thing to. That's not a good thing to do. Was not kidding. All right. As I was saying, situational or satirical can be really effective if you can properly balance between the obliviousness of the subject matter and the vagueness of the satire. If people know exactly what you're satirizing, it can make it funnier. But if they have to go looking into it, sometimes that can actually lead to some interesting, like, okay, that's clever. I didn't see that there. Yep. Some good examples of satires, because also comedy can be really educational, and they can be used as a good way to mask good satire. Some good examples in both fanfiction and outside of it. Cats Don't Dance. Are you guys familiar with that story? Cats Don't Dance?
I know the movie.
The movie, that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
Yeah, the movie Cats Don't Dance. Yeah, I'm not surprised. It did not do very well because it came out about the same time as Disney Renaissance stories. It's fun. But actually the entire movie, it's basically about a cat who's going to Hollywood to star in movies, but turns out that animals only get token roles. They only can play animals, with animal voices and sounds. And actually, it's satirizing and referencing the race relations in Hollywood in the 1930s and 40s. That's the entire point of the story. I find that fascinating and interesting, and you have to go looking. You have to kind of look into that to notice it. And then you get other stories like the fanfiction Duplicity by Skywriter, which satirizes the entire Changeling and Equestria storyline. She's a changeling. Nobody cares. Everybody cares in a Changeling and Equestria story. That's the point. And that's comedy. Now it's time for tragedy. Though often bittersweet, tragedies do not necessarily have to have a sad ending. Tragedies rely on characters suffering through bad situations and not always coming out stronger or better than when they entered. They're not often better for the experiences. And the dark tag will almost always be attached because the things, the sad or the bad things that happen to your characters, generally outside the range of the show. Usually. The subject of Shiva, no. The subject of death does not just inherently require tragedy. The sad tag will usually be fine unless your entire narrative is building up to a death. If you're going in knowing full well that you're building up all these great relationships, all of these fantastic experiences, and you're gonna kill your character off, you better warn them with a tragedy tag because you will destroy something. These are comforts. These are to let people know what's coming in. Yep. Okay. Misery of your character is necessary to sympathize with them, but be aware of how much is too far. You know, again, with comedy, too much misery, and it starts to feel bad. But even tragedies can go too far, to where it's not even realistic. Like, give the guy a break. Even the universe isn't that harsh. So unless you are specifically writing a sadfic or a grimfic, try to leave some measure of hope. Try to make it like people could maybe, eventually, potentially recover. Unless, of course, you're wanting to make a situation in which they don't. They break. They shatter. You're making some Lovecraftian horror story. No hope is fine there. Because that's
Never hope to begin.
on that note, sad. Sadfics are stories in which the intention is to instill a sense of instill a sense of sympathy and empathy in the audience. The entire narrative is constructed around eliciting an emotional response. And while it's often criticized as often being cheap, sadfics are actually quite important to the history of My Little Pony because either bittersweet or depressing, sadfics make up some of the most important fanfiction stories. Let's think, what's the most famous one? Oh, right. My Little Dashie by Capron 53. Yeah, a little overhyped, maybe, a little overdone, maybe. Sad, you better believe it. Many of the stories in the Fallout Equestria universe, in particular Murky Number 7 by Fuzzy Vivi, is a kind of a bit of a downer. Actually, everything in Equestria, or Fallout Equestria is a bit of a downer, but that's the point. But, wait, where did what's going on? What happened?
Professional. You went back, and you haven't been clicking.
I can't see it from here. I have to look over there, and I can't always. Yep. So there we go. Which brings up the question. You know, why would anyone want to cry? Like, why is that important?
Catharsis.
Feels.
Exactly, catharsis. All people require emotional release. Stories can give them that opportunity by allowing them to enter into the mind and experiences of someone else. Sadfics can become therapeutic. Sometimes we can use stories to help us deal with issues that we ourselves maybe can't experience in our day-to-day lives. Get over something that we're having in our personal lives that we don't know how to handle. So we handle them through someone else or someone else. However, the sadfic or the sad tag can also be used in darker fics and grim fics to warn readers to the presence of potentially emotionally compromising content. Like, if you're gonna cry because of what you're about to see, you need the sad tag. Sometimes you don't put a tag necessarily because it fits within the genre, but just to be nice to your audience. Just be friendly, give them a bone, because some people just can't handle sad fics. I wish someone had told me that Bros in Equestria was going to be the depressing, mind-numbing experience that it was. Nobody did. And I don't believe there was a sad tag on it. It was a comedy. I didn't expect that. I'm still broken up about that one. Some good tips for sadfix, though. While people who read sadfix will appreciate emotional release, they want to feel like the story earned it. Do not go for the cheap feels. If you have an event, a death, a terminal illness that will occur in your story, build up to it. Fault in Our Stars builds up to whatever you guys can probably guess is going to happen. Don't Nicholas Sparks your stories. Because Nicholas Sparks, he writes the same story, let's be honest here. It's the young teenage girl who goes in to meet with a family member she's never been in, happens to meet up with a nice guy. They get along, but he has this dark emotional stuff, but she helps him to recover, and then he dies. and check. All right.
And every night, everybody time and buying his books.
Yeah, that.
No one has to buy a Nicholas Sparks book anymore.
Like, good.
Thank you. Yep. I would do the same thing with the Hallmark original movies, but again, I already did with Meg Ryan summer.
I don't think anyone watches the Hallmark original movies.
My family does.
Your family's old.
Yes, my family is old. All right. Oh yeah. You have to, if you're gonna have something terrible happen, imply it through the narrative, through hints, subtle clues, and the like. Don't just drop a sudden tragedy out of nowhere for the sake of feels. That will be seen as cheap and leave the reader feeling used. And no, nothing turns off a reader more quickly than being used. Use the dark tag when necessary. Again, just like sadfix sometimes need a warning. The dark tag can be used as a warning, which, on note of dark and horror is a new genre. I don't like to read it. I don't do horror. I don't do gore. You know, I might be the Brony Critic, but I'm not reading cupcakes. I don't care. I'm not reading cupcakes. Maybe one day if I do a Brony Critic Asks Questions thing, like the things you will never review, that will be on it. Alright, fanfiction gives readers and authors a great deal of leeway with the source material. Stories will often be darker than the original, including themes and content that the show either can't or won't deal with. We will never see Applejack's parents. We will never hear them be talked about or discussed. Or the reason why, because the only thing we're ever going to get of death is, in, ironically enough, the Valentine's Day song with the funeral. Calling a fic dark, however, means that it has mature themes like death, prejudice, etc. It does not inherently imply dark or graphic content, just subtext or context. Horror means mature content that is meant to unnerve the audience. Dark can be talking about subject material. Horror would be showing dark material. That's kind of the distinction. You know, you can talk about it, you can imply it, and that can make it dark. But if you're actually showing it, it's all how you deliver that. You know, for higher rated fanfics, teen and mature, dark is not only acceptable, but often necessary in order to justify the content present. Language, violence, but again, sort of a difference. I'm going to get to this with the next couple of slides. Particularly in regards to horror, dark is about the intention, the themes of the story rather than the content. Unless your intention is to frighten or terrify your audience, avoid the horror tag because it will be an automatic red light to any reader who, like me, might not want to read horror. And maybe your story might not actually deserve it. The distinction, and again, the distinction between dark and horror can be understood by distinguishing and being cautious with the use of what I call the Troublesome Trio. Tips for the difference between a good example for dark and horror, again, continuing with horror, the difference between shock and suspense. With horror, you're often going to be told shockle. Like, do you want to shock your audience or be suspenseful? And this will come down to the Alfred Hitchcock quote. Alfred Hitchcock once compared the difference between shock and suspense as seeing an explosion kill two guys and watching the timer tick down as the two are talking obliviously. Like, if you see the bomb, timer ticking, then you cut to them talking, just leisurely, not even about anything. You see the timer, them, timer, them, timer, explosion. That's suspenseful. Whereas if you just see explosion, yeah, you're gonna get like a
The
jump.
real suspense is that never suspense.
That could be the other thing right there.
Though I do think that definitely gore and horror do not have to go together. Like, a lot of Lovecraft's work was
Fear of the unknown.
not gory at all. It was just mind-bending and filling you with a deep and intense sense of meaninglessness.
Right, and we actually have to get through the comments and questions real quick because we only got about 20 minutes, and I got 4 more pages. Gosh. All right. While shock does have its advantages, suspense is far more effective in providing scares, as it can assist in reader investment. Will it happen? Will it happen? Is it? Is it? Is it? It didn't! Woo! You know, stuff like that. I'm not an actor. I'm trying. When writing horror, though, implication can do wonders. Yeah, you can show the mass murderer slaughtering all the people, but if you just hear it, it's much worse, isn't it? If you see the shadow on the wall as he's doing it, that's much worse. Not showing things in horror is actually much more effective. This is why Jaws is so scary. You don't see the shark. This is why horror films keep the mass murderer out of the frame for a good majority of it until like the final act. Actually, I have a whole film theory thing about that, but that's a thing I did for like a college paper. And here we go. The Troublesome Trio. Sex, gore, and random tags. These three, they're not really genres in their own, but they're basically warning labels. Sex refers to any form of sexual contact, graphic or innuendo. Romance stories do not automatically imply sexual content. And really it's much more, you can talk about it, that's fine. You show it, sex tag. You imply heavily, sex tag. But implication is usually you can usually get a little leeway, particularly with teen. Innuendo is kind of necessary. I mean, let's be honest here, American English, we are the kings of innuendo. We really are. Then we have the gore tag, which is really any graphic depiction or description of violence. A story can have violent acts and not be gory, simply because of how it describes or implies that violence. You can show a guy getting beheaded, but if you just talk about how he gets beheaded, but if you talk about the blood dripping on the sword, and the light leaving his eyes and stuff like that, then you might need the gore tag just a bit. Now, and then of course there's the random tag, which random tag is just troubling in and of itself because random is often used as an excuse to do whatever you want. And that's not always the best thing. Random is really almost always used with comedy. And again, it's usually used as an excuse for why the comedy's not very good. Like, it's supposed to be random. No, you just can't organize a story properly. Random should be that things might happen in a disjointed means. It means much more, or actually random could actually be much more usable. I think its intention should be that it's a story that doesn't fit into any genre. That it doesn't quite fit or match any kind of description that we would have. And we're coming up to the end of the genres and we only have a little bit more to go. But the next three, then they have to be combined as three because they're mostly new with one exception. They go together with both their content and their reputation. Human, anthro, and These three genres have probably the worst reputation out of any fanfiction. Bar none. And ironically enough, you can fit almost all of these stories into three categories. Human and Equestria. A human arrives from Earth to Equestria, or some variation therein. Human turned pony. Human from Earth comes to Equestria, turns into a pony, or pony goes over to Earth, turns into human. Humans historically equestrian. Did you guys know that actually humans have always existed in Equestria, but the apocalypse destroyed them, or they went into stasis for 1,000 years, or secretly they're living in a civilization all their own, and now they're getting revealed. And as much as these three could be legitimate genres in and of themselves, much like the Troublesome Trio, they're mostly used as warning labels. Warning, you're about to read a human story, because that will turn on quite a few people automatically. This is going to be some advice for human anthro and EQG stories, and it might sound like bad advice. Don't try to be original. Really, just about everything that has been done can be done in some capacity. Instead, work to try to make your unoriginal story the best possible example of that already worn subject. You have seen if you have read one human in a question story, you have probably read most of them. Hi, I'm a human. Alright, what do humans eat? Meat? Or, like griffins. And the fact that I can just stay right out there, and you probably can name off the top of your head several human and equestrian stories that do exactly that. That same plot line. Gets into a relationship with Twilight. As soon as they arrive in town, Rainbow Dash kicks their butts.
Everybody becomes Flash Sentry.
Exactly. So don't try to be original necessarily. Just try to make the story you're going to be making the best you possibly can. Yes.
I think you might have left out the ponies in real life one. The ponies in real life type stories.
I would kind of put that more in it's the inverse of the human turned pony. Or maybe even the inverse of the equestrians historically human. Or equestrian. Yeah.
I think you left off it's a regular fanfic except it's in Equestria Girls. because there are
that is another good example of, hey, we have humans, so let's just write a story about humans with the Equestria Girls tag. The Equestria Girls tag being used as an excuse to write non-pony fan fiction. It's an interesting idea. I actually haven't seen it done too much though, because usually fan fiction is actually really stringent about keeping it pony related in some capacity. Now, we've talked about genre. Alright. We've talked about genre. Now you have an idea, you have a story. How do you get started? You're obviously ready to write now. This is going to be the longest and most trying process. This is the toughest part. Actually writing down your story. You will go through moments of frustration and mental fatigue, as well as struggles through editing and finally publishing. There are a number of things you can do to make this process easier on yourself, and those being, get yourself a support system and develop good writing habits. What do I mean when I say get yourself a support system? That means find friends and family that you can share your experiences and bounce ideas off of. Writing is an extremely stressful process, as many of you can prescribe to, and many ideas will be a hit or a miss. Having people you can confide in will help to keep you from burning out, maybe inspire you with new ideas, and it can often be the first line of editing and reading. But make sure to confide in friends, not fans, because fans will want to really convince you of their idea. Friends will want to help you out with your idea. Fans tend to either be a bit pushy or could even spoil stories. If you're wanting a surprise, oops, hey, we wanted this information. Now we got it. Now, let's see. Yep. Now, creating good writing and world building habits. Again, make a point to try to write every day, whether it's stream of consciousness writing, develop your day, like describe your day, your dreams, your hopes, etc. All of this will help you to practice your own written voice. You can also start with scenes and prompts of stories. If you don't know how your entire story is going to go, if you have a scene in your head, write it down. Write out how that idea would be structured and work. You know, put that idea to paper or computer, however. As long as it gets written down, it's available to you. It's there now for you to look back on later instead of being stuck in here where it can be forgotten over the next episode of My Little Pony or Steven Universe or whichever. It can also help you distinguish between good and bad ideas, which is a really helpful quality. Because sometimes you'll write an idea and like, that's stupid. But you've written it down at least. You've got it down to paper. Another good advice, be one with your characters. Connect to them, step into their shoes, act out an important scene. This can help you with staging and characterization. It sounds silly, like suddenly getting into your voice, you know, but it's a thing I actually do with my characters, is I will suddenly, for 15, 20 minutes, I'm not me. I am whichever character I'm trying to act out a scene about. Because it helps me figure out, what would they say? Why are they thinking that? Where did that come from? And maybe I can figure out something more from them. Another good example. Ask questions. When creating scenes and story prompts, ask questions about your world and your characters. Why are these characters talking? How do they know each other? Where are they? Where did this place come from? What are they talking about? Why are they talking about that? All of these will help you to discover the answers as they evolve from those questions, and they'll help you to expand out the world you're creating. So you gotta be careful not to get bogged down in the details. There are two kinds of writers as far as world building is concerned, and they're referred to as the engineers and the gardeners. The engineers plan out step by step how everything is connected to everything else. They'll go year by year by year what happened in the history of this world. Gardeners will write, and as they're writing, new ideas, world things will just kind of grow from the page. I happen to be an engineer. Great for developing worlds. Not so great for writing stories yet. But each has their advantages and disadvantages. Find your motivations and surround yourselves in them. If you work best with music, keep music in the background. You think best in the shower, keep a journal or a recorder nearby to record ramblings. Just don't put the journal in the shower. Like, use some sense for a little bit. Alright. And so change your routine to foster good creative habits. You know, you want to be able to write more and more, not have to deal with mental breaks and, you know, writer's block and all these different things. Figure out and change up your writing habits so that those either don't happen or that you can get motivated out of them. And that's the only way you're ever going to get out of a writer's block, is to be motivated to write through it. Or sometimes just change things up. Now, we go to editing. You've written your story, everything's good. You will need someone to read and proofread your work. Do not proofread your own work, at least not initially, because you will have been staring at that page for months. You will not see any of the flaws. Look at this PowerPoint. I've been working on this for a month. I didn't catch any of these issues because I've been staring at it for a month. I didn't see any problems with it. I finished this at 2 in the morning. Not 2 in the morning today, but 2-3 days ago. I think 3 days ago, yeah, something like that. Find someone in that support system you established to check your story and allow them to be honest. You know, if they say, delete that, take another look at it. It might be true. And when both of you are satisfied with your story, then you can release it. Thankfully, publishing fanfictions online are like tremendously easy, ridiculously easy now. And publishing, to help your story get better, join groups. Find groups similar to the content of your story and share your story to that group. Be active in the fanfiction community and people will investigate you and by extension your stories. Try to comment on different people's stories because they'll probably look at your stuff. A lot of fanfiction writers will go, hey, thanks for liking my story. Thanks for commenting. I really enjoyed it. I like your story too. You've got a fan. Don't rely on the news stories or the featured sections, particularly on fanfiction. They're really flawed. The coding is all weird. The news stories might work out for you a little bit, but news stories get added so quickly to fanfiction, you'll maybe get 10 minutes. On like a busy day, you'll get maybe 10-15 minutes before you're completely blocked out by news stories. All right. You might need, and you know, if you can't find a group, if you're writing multiple stories, you might need to make your own group for your stories, especially if your stories all belong to the same continuity. Most of all, patience and persistence are key. Quality is rewarded. Now, dealing with criticism. Dealing with fanfiction means online forums and comments. YouTube syndrome, that is anonymity, will make it equally likely that responses to your stories will be constructive and friendly or vitriolic and cruel. You must distinguish between trolls and critics. A critic will always be positive. You know? All right. The critic will always be positive, constructive, and polite. They'll give if they give recommendations or advice, take it to heart as they want your work to be the very best. You know, they might they might criticize it, but it's coming from a place where they enjoyed your story, they want to see more. However, trolls will be aggressive, vindictive, and do nothing but tear down your work, if they mention it at all. The best policy for trolls is honestly just to ignore them. They want attention more than they want to comment on the quality of your creation. And they'll often have an image like that. And of course, there is the other kind of critic, the wannabe editors. These are commenters that spend the entirety of their post quoting your story, grammatical and story errors, and correcting them. Are these critics or trolls? That's a good question. Depending on the delivery, the majority are actually critics who are trying to assist you as your last line of grammatical defense. You know, so make the appropriate corrections as long as they don't alter the story in a major way. But do take any alterations with a grain of salt. Remember, is your story first and foremost. So you've written a story, you've published it, everything's good. What's next? If you're done writing, maybe you'll never write again. Maybe, and that's okay. You don't have another story in you. Sometimes you might. And so, don't, continue writing. Continue doing all that stuff you want. Let the second continue. But don't do sequels for their own sake. Make sequels because the story requires a sequel, because you think it needs a sequel to finish up what is going on. Don't just continue to write a story because your fans want you to continue. Sometimes join writing prompts for ideas. If there's a contest at a convention or something, take part in those contests. Also, listen to your fans. I know I just said that, ultimately it's up to you, but sometimes fans can give you great ideas. Sometimes they can even motivate you to say, I never thought about that. I'll do it. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And that's fine, because it's your motivation to write the story, because now you see where the story can continue on. So, in summary, fanfiction is a work of love, or fiction is any work of fiction is a work of love. Fanfiction is even more so. Never go into fanfiction with the intention of becoming popular. You have to understand the common elements and expectations of the genre and the stories which you write, and don't always try to avoid tropes, try to turn them on their head. Always try to create a support group and practice good writing habits. Listen to your critics, but ignore the trolls. And ultimately, this is your story. You are the god of your narrative world. I would say questions or comments, but we are actually out of time. But if you guys have questions or comments that you'd like to talk to me about, I will be outside, and I would be glad to hear anything you guys have to say.
That's the last frame again?
What?
Who's the last frame again?
Yes.
Back one?
Previous.
Okay.
Yep.
If you want to take a look at any of this again, he will be posting it on YouTube.
Yep. If you guys want to see any of this again, it will be posted up on my YouTube page. Also, be sure to check me out on YouTube and on Fanfiction. Jacob Fox is my Fanfiction name.
And you could upload this PowerPoint like in the descriptions. Okay.